I'm talking today about Rahab, and if you were here a couple of weeks ago, I talked about Tamar, and I did it as Tamar. I just told her story from her point of view, and I'm going to do that again this week. So I'm beginning. My name is Rahab the prostitute. Yes, my last name is the prostitute. Of course I'm joking. But my story is told in the Bible in the book of Joshua, and that is how I was introduced. Joshua sent 2 spies to check out the city of Jericho, my city, and they entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab. And ever since, for thousands of years, my name has been Rahab the prostitute. It would be nice if instead I were known as, if instead I were known as Rahab the hospitable. That's what James, the brother of Jesus, the Messiah, thought was most important about me, even though he did use my full name. He said, in the same way, was not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction. So Rahab the hospitable, that was also me. You're probably wondering how a nice woman like me became a prostitute. It was not my choice. I came from a large family. I was the youngest. My brothers and sisters all married, but I did not. No husband was found for me. My parents were quite old and infirm by the time I was of age. They couldn't help me, and I knew they wouldn't be around forever, and I had to make my own way. I had to help them as well as they grew old. This was the only option left for me. No woman chooses this life of her own free will. I remember, at that time, I didn't know the Lord, the God of Israel. My culture didn't value purity the way the Israelites did. But I did learn to know him and to fear him. I was blessed by him. I entered into my own personal covenant relationship with him, and he fulfilled every promise to me. When I was a young girl, I learned about the Israelites. They were a nomadic people wandering through the Sinai wilderness. And they were unique in history because they had been a slave people who had freed themselves. They didn't do it by war, by the singular power of their God, the God they called Yahweh, which means I am. I loved that mysterious name. It captured my imagination. Yahweh didn't show his power by giving the Israelites strength. No, he showed it through his own strength. He sent plague after plague after plague through Egypt until the Pharaoh finally had enough and sent the Israelites away. The Israelites never fought. They just watched as the Nile turned into blood, or as locusts came out of the land and ate everything, or as frogs attacked people in their homes, or as the Egyptians broke out in boils. Never were the Israelites afflicted. After the firstborn of all Egypt were killed by Yahweh's angel of death, Pharaoh finally let them walk away. The Israelites were eventually headed for Canaan, our land. We knew that, but it had happened so long ago, 40 years, and the people became complacent. Israelites wandering in the desert didn't even come to mind for most of us until Israelites wiped out Sihon and Og, the lands of 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan. That caught our attention. In fact, it made our hearts melt within us. Everyone's courage failed. The Israelites had by then encamped just across the Jordan River from Jericho. My city and those who were in the surrounding area took shelter within our walls. Rumors were flying everywhere. I knew we were doomed. Yahweh was far too powerful. Then, miraculously, these 2 Israelites showed up at my door, looking for a place to stay. Of course, it was dangerous to take them in. But I was far more afraid of the Israelite God than I was of my neighbors. I told these spies everything. I said to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. And this, of course, was useful information to them. Then came a knock on the door. At that point, my name could have become Rahab the Courageous. I knew that knock meant trouble. So I sent the Israelite men up to my roof, and I covered them with flax that I had been drying there. And then I answered the door. It was messengers from the king of Jericho. They said, "Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land." Well, if I gave them up, I knew I would never survive what the Israelites would bring. But what if the king's messengers discovered the spies in my house? That would be instant death. So here is where Rahab the quick-witted came in. I said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I didn't know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, they left. I don't know which way they went, but go after them quickly. You may catch up with them." They believed me and went. I went upstairs where the spies were hiding. Still in my quick-witted mode, I became Rahab the negotiator. "Now then," I said to the Israelite spies, "please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death." "Our lives for your life," they assured me. "If you don't tell what we're doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us this land." Then they went on, "This oath you made us swear will not be binding on us unless, when we enter the land, you have tied the scarlet cord in this window, and unless you have brought your father and mother, your brothers, and all your family into your house. If any of them go outside your house into the street, their blood will be on their own heads. We will not be responsible. As for those who are in your house with you, their blood will be on our head if a hand is laid on them. But if you tell what we're doing, we will be released from this oath that you made us swear." "Agreed," I said, "let it be as you say." My house was built right into the city wall, so I let them down by a rope through the window so they wouldn't have to try to go through the city gate. Before they escaped, I told them, "Go to the hills so that your pursuers will not find you. Hide there 3 days until they return, and then go your way." The hills were to the west of the city, but the Jordan was to the east, where the Israelites were encamped. That's where those men would probably have been following them. The hills had plenty of caves where the men could hide for a few days. As soon as they left, I dropped that scarlet cord from my window. Then I and my family waited. We waited for the assault. I learned the story later about how the Lord Yahweh told Joshua what to do. He had said to Joshua over and over, before the Israelites even entered the land, "Be strong and courageous." And I liked that. I feel like Yahweh had given me strength and courage to do what needed to be done to save my family and myself, and to give helpful information to the Israelites. So it's a watchword for me too. Be strong and courageous. Then Yahweh told Joshua precisely how to attack the city, and it took days. First, orders were given throughout the whole Israelite camp. Then all the Israelites consecrated themselves. Joshua told the people, "When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits between you and the ark." That's about 1 kilometer, so quite a distance. When the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. The Jordan is at flood stage during harvest. Yet, as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam. So all the people crossed over just by opposite Jericho. And the priests stood on dry ground in the middle of the river while all Israel passed by. The whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground, keeping their distance, as Joshua had said. By this time, no one was coming or going from Jericho itself. Our gates were barred. We had food and we had water and were prepared for a siege. We knew that hundreds of thousands of Israelites, men, women, and children, had set up camp at Gilgal. We were all holding our breath, waiting for that attack. The tension was incredible. Finally, the watchman saw movement. It was an armed guard coming over the horizon, leading the way to the city. 7 priests blowing trumpet followed that armed guard. Then the ark of the Lord was carried by more priests. After that, the rear guard. Beside the sound of trumpet, no sound was made. No war cry, not a word. The army marched up to the city, once around the city wall, then returned to the camp with their wives and children and spent the night there. The people in our city were unnerved. The army hadn't come close enough for the men to shoot their arrows. It was terrifying to those inside the walls. What could it mean? Well, the next day, the exact same thing happened. They came over the horizon. They came up close enough to the wall so that we could see them. They marched all the way around our city once and then went back. The 3rd day, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th. What was the meaning of this torture? Were they taunting the men of Jericho? Then on the 7th day, the parade didn't end after one time around the wall. It continued until each man had circled the city 7 times. After that, we heard a tremendous shout. The trumpets blasted, and suddenly I felt the wall next to me leap. The city wall. The whole thing began to collapse, except for the wall of my house. The Israelite army charged into the city and took it. They destroyed everything in it. It happened so fast. The young men who had done the spying found me, and they brought out my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and their families, and they put us all out in a place outside the camp of Israel. I watched from there as the army burned the entire city and everything in it. Everything I had known. But because I now knew the Lord God of Israel, and because he had been faithful to me, I knew I would be faithful to him. I would not miss my old life in Jericho. In fact, you could call me Rahab the Faithful. The writer of Hebrews commended me for my faith. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. In fact, because of my faith, God declared me righteous. Yes, me, Rahab the prostitute. Well, this isn't the end of my story. Yahweh did not forget me. He blessed me again. He gave me a husband, a man of some stature named Solomon from the tribe of Judah. Solomon came from a prominent family. Judah's son, Perez by Tamar, was legally Judah's firstborn, and the firstborn of Perez was Hezron, and Hezron's firstborn was Ram, who was the father of Amminadab, the father of Nahshon, the father of my husband Solomon. Together he and I had a son named Boaz. And you can read the rest of the family tree in the Gospel of Matthew. So maybe you could call me Rahab, the answer of Jesus Messiah. Solomon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Boaz, the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Obed, the father of Jesse, and Jesse, the father of King David. And it goes on all the way to Joseph and Jesus. Now that I've told you my story, I need to say that I have come to terms with my name, Rahab the prostitute. It takes a bit of strength and courage to go about with that name, to carry it through all of history. But I can do all things through my Lord and my God. Of course, I have repented of all that sin that was part of my life as a pagan. And God can redeem any situation and forgive any sin. But we all do live with the consequences of our actions. And sometimes that might mean going around with the name Rahab the prostitute. My name Rahab the prostitute also demonstrates a wonderful truth about the God we worship, whether we're Israelites, Amorites like me, and all other Gentiles. God can use anyone who is willing to be used. And sometimes it's the prostitutes who are willing. Those who have a reputation to maintain have a harder time making a full commitment. I also believe that my name and profession was a foretaste of how Jesus the Messiah saw his mission, his ministry. He said the healthy don't need healing. And I wonder if Jesus remembered my name in his own genealogy when he befriended sinners.